He walked into the building he owned. They told him to wait outside. They didn't recognize the face behind their billion-dollar growth. They thought he was a driver. 3 hours later, the company lost 47% of its value. This isn't just a story about racism in a boardroom. It's about what happens when a man builds an empire and then watches them burn in it. He pulled into the lot at 6:38 a.m. sharp. Bentley, midnight black, fresh out of detailing. The sun hadn't even cleared the skyline of downtown Toronto yet, but he was already dressed for war. 3-piece navy suit, custom stitched in Milan. A Rolex Daytona on his wrist. No cologne, just the sharp, clean scent of wealth. He stepped out of the car and nodded at the 2 parking attendants who pretended not to see him. It wasn't new to him. The pretending, the not seeing. But what happened that morning would be the last time. Not just for him, for them, and for the company they'd built on his back. His name was Derrick Kwame Sinclair, born in a housing project in East Scarborough, 1983. His mother worked nights in a hospital cafeteria. His father, gone by the time he turned 7. He wasn't raised in boardrooms. He was raised on survival. By 13, he was selling candy from his backpack. By 15, stolen iPhones. By 16, code. He learned how to build scripts that bypassed school firewalls. Then scripts that scraped data from public records. Then scripts that could tell you more about a person in 5 seconds than Google could in 5 hours. At 17, he built a predictive analytics tool so accurate it could tell a bank who would default on a loan before the paperwork was signed. At 19, he got his first cease and desist from Equifax. At 22, he sold his first company for $2.3 million. But he never smiled in the press photos, because even when he was the founder, they asked him to stand on the side. Even when it was his name on the patent. The company was called Neuron Pay. What PayPal used to be for sending money, Neuron was for understanding how money moved. It could track financial behavior, predict market shocks, even flag fraud weeks before it happened. By 2021, Neuron was worth over $8.6 billion. And Derrick? He was the invisible engine, because while he was founder and CEO, his face was never on the homepage. He let his white COO, the affable, camera-ready Michael Chadworth, be the public darling. It was strategic, not self-loathing. Derrick knew the game. They fund who they see as familiar, not who's best. But the deeper into success he got, the more invisible he became. Until the day he stopped being invisible and started being unforgiving. That morning, Derrick arrived early for a surprise audit. There'd been red flags, unapproved expenses from the investor accounts, bonuses paid out to executives without his signature, whispers about a side deal with a competitor in Berlin. He didn't text ahead, didn't call his assistant. He walked straight into the building he owned 62% of. The security guard, new, stepped in his way. "Sir, this entrance is for staff." Derrick raised an eyebrow. "I am staff." The guard looked him up and down. "Delivery guys use the rear dock. If you've got something for us, leave it there." Derrick stared, silent, calculated. He said nothing. Then 2 white executives arrived. Jason from legal, Debbie from risk. They breezed past the guard, eyes low. Jason mumbled, "Hey Dee," then kept walking. Didn't intervene. Didn't stop. Didn't even blink. Derrick stepped back. Not out of fear, out of clarity. He saw it then as clearly as he had ever seen anything. It was never his company. It was his machinery. But someone else had written the rules. And so, while they rode the elevator up, he opened his phone and started to write. He wasn't just brilliant. He was dangerous. Because unlike most CEOs, Derrick never gave up control of the code. He had the master keys, the root access, the back doors, the systems they didn't even know he built. He watched in real time as they used company funds to fly to conferences they didn't attend. He saw the off-books payments to shell firms in Switzerland. He saw the emails between board members mocking his hoodie and hustle leadership style. And he downloaded all of it. Petabytes. Proof. What they didn't know was this. Derrick had already built a kill switch into Neuron. Not to destroy it, but to expose it. He called it the Reckoning Protocol. If triggered, he would send encrypted copies of all board-level communications to regulatory agencies in Canada, the UK, and the US. Publish anonymized executive pay disparities to a secure public dashboard. Upload every diversity audit, hiring policy, and failure to promote report to a dedicated media server. And finally, broadcast a live internal memo titled, "This is how they reward black brilliance." By noon, the stock price had begun to slide. Not because of the leak, but because Derrick stopped something. Neuron's system predicted market shocks, but it could also trigger them. A subtle shift in algorithm weighting, a delay in reporting to key clients, a pause in alerts. Nothing illegal, nothing obvious, but to an industry hooked on real-time certainty, it was like unplugging a ventilator. Within hours, financial Twitter was ablaze. Is Neuron down? Massive delay in risk data today. Anyone else see that strange lag in the Sinclair feed? Clients began to panic. One by one, high-frequency traders pulled out. A domino effect. The stock dropped 14% by 3 p.m. Another 9% by 6 p.m. At 6:02 p.m., the Reckoning Protocol activated. Screens lit up across 73 offices globally. An email from Derrick Sinclair. Subject, "I built this with blood. Now you will bleed truth." Inside, a 47-page document. Screenshots, transaction histories, boardroom transcripts, security footage. Attached at the bottom, a single .zip file titled Redemption. No password, no NDA, just truth. In Paris, an intern opened the file. Then a journalist. Then a whistleblower from another firm. By midnight, hashtags were trending in 4 languages. Hashtag Neuron Fall. Hashtag Built by Black Brains. Hashtag Sinclair Speaks. CNN called it the most explosive tech takedown from the inside in modern history. By morning, 4 top executives had resigned. The company lost $2.1 billion in market value. The board released a statement. But Derrick? He released a video. Black suit, black tie, white wall behind him, eyes like a storm. "I was told to wait outside a building I built, so I've decided to build something they'll never be allowed in again." The media didn't know what to do with him. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He wasn't demanding justice. He wasn't asking for change. He wasn't asking for anything at all. He was just there, stoic, unapologetic. And the world wasn't ready for that kind of black man. The morning after the leak, Neuron Pay went silent. Their servers slowed. Their lawyers scattered. Their COO, Michael Chadworth, deleted his LinkedIn and locked his Twitter. Too late. Derrick had already archived it all. The same people who ignored his emails were now begging for an emergency call. The same investors who once asked him to hire someone more experienced looking as CFO now called him visionary. He didn't return a single call. Instead, he sat in his Toronto penthouse, glass walls overlooking the skyline, and watched the news anchors stammer through their words. A shocking internal leak. A black tech founder outsmarting the very system that silenced him. We have never seen a corporate takedown this precise. But Derrick had, in his head, for years. This was not revenge. This was release. By day 3, Neuron's largest client, Titan Bank, severed ties. They cited concerns over transparency and executive misconduct. Shares plummeted another 17%. A class action suit was filed by former black employees who'd been wrongfully dismissed. Derrick was named as a witness, not a defendant. Reporters were now camping outside his building. Derrick, do you regret anything? Derrick, are you going to build again? Derrick, are you going to speak to Congress? But Derrick was done speaking to the system. He had a new plan, a darker one, a bolder one, a plan that would never require the approval of men in suits ever again. 12 days after the leak, he went live. Not on YouTube, not on CNBC, but on a private, encrypted stream accessible only through a link sent to every black entrepreneur he had ever met. It wasn't flashy. No slides. No music. just his voice. They told me I was too ambitious, too angry, too urban, too intimidating, too unrelatable. They used words like culture fit. They asked me to cut my hair. They told me to soften my tone. I obeyed. For years, I played chess, but they burned the board anyway. So now, I'm building something where no one gets to burn anything. Not without facing me. He unveiled his next company, founder Zero, a sovereign, black-owned venture architecture firm. No investors, no board, no filters. A fully encrypted AI-built platform for black creators to launch, scale, and sell companies, without ever needing the validation of the old world. And the first round? $100 million. His own money, all of it. CNN called it radical. Forbes called it a threat to institutional venture capital. But Black Twitter? Black Twitter called it freedom. Hashtag founders like me trended for 3 weeks. Dozens of young coders began posting their ideas. Derrick personally mentored 10 of them in the first month. And unlike Neuron, he made them keep their names on the patents. Meanwhile, Neuron was bleeding. The board tried to sue him for willful sabotage. Their lawyers froze when Derrick's team released the emails showing internal racism, theft, and regulatory fraud. The case was dismissed. Michael Chadworth disappeared from public life. But not from Derrick's story, because what no one knew was this. Michael was once Derrick's closest friend. Back in 2013, they had built the first prototype of Neuron together. Michael had been Derrick's roommate at Stanford. They studied late, built code, skipped parties. Derrick trusted him, even when the VC meetings turned cold. Even when Michael started taking calls without him. He didn't see the betrayal coming. Until the day Michael had coffee with a German competitor, pitched Neuron's source code, and then denied it to Derrick's face. He never confronted him. Not back then. His documented, waited, and then, 10 years later, he burned him down with receipts. An anonymous leak of an internal Zoom call emerged. Michael, unaware it was being recorded, said this to another board member. He's brilliant, but he doesn't understand how the game works. These kinds of founders are emotional. They burn hot and fast. We'll run the company once he self-destructs. The video had over 33 million views in 4 days. Michael resigned in disgrace. His wife left him. He tried to sue for defamation. He lost. He sold his house to pay legal fees. Derrick never once mentioned his name again. Not in interviews. Not in speeches. Silence was louder than revenge. 6 months passed. Founder, Zero launched 12 startups. 7 of them profitable. 2 of them already acquired. One built by a 19-year-old girl from Brixton. Another by a Haitian immigrant from Montreal. All of them black. All of them owning 100% of their equity. For the first time in decades, VC firms were afraid. Because money was leaving their table and going directly into communities they couldn't control. One of Derrick's companies, a microlending app called BlackBank, refused a $60 million buyout from JP Morgan. The founder said, "I don't need your money. Derrick taught me how to build my own." Derrick was offered a Netflix deal. He declined. They offered him $20 million. He declined again. They want to own the story. I'd rather live it. He had built the future in silence. But the old world doesn't like silence. It doesn't like when you don't need it. It doesn't like when you walk away and then come back stronger. So they came for him. Not with guns. Not with lawsuits. With narratives. After Founder, Zero launched its 3rd wave of black-owned tech companies. A whisper campaign began. Not in blogs. Not in newspapers. But on LinkedIn. Whispers that Derrick was toxic. That his leadership was cult-like. That his silence made people uncomfortable. That his eyes were calculating. These were words you couldn't sue. You couldn't point to them on paper. But they stuck like smoke. Soon after, headlines followed. Ex-Neuronzo faces accusations of cult behavior. The dark side of Founder, Zero's inner circle. Is Derrick Fontaine the Elon Musk of black tech? Or something worse? Derrick didn't blink. He expected this. He knew that if he was loud, they'd call him angry. If he was quiet, they'd call him dangerous. If he was successful, they'd call him lucky. If he failed, they'd call him proof. But he wasn't here for their approval anymore. The smear machine. Journalists began reaching out to former employees. Most had nothing but praise, but a few, carefully selected, told edited stories. A disgruntled developer said Derrick didn't greet him in the hallway. An ex-contractor claimed the culture was too militant. A white intern said she felt excluded at an event about Black economic independence. BuzzFeed published a 5,000-word hit piece. It featured grainy photos, twisted timelines. But the real headline came from a video, an edited clip of Derrick in a private meeting saying, "They built this country on our backs. Now we build our empires on their ignorance." The quote, stripped of context, went viral. Hashtag Derrick hates white people trended. Conservative pundits pounced. They compared him to terrorists. They called founder Zero black supremacy in a suit. For 3 weeks, Derrick said nothing. He didn't post, didn't tweet, didn't appear in public. People said he was running, but Derrick was watching. He watched how fast people changed, how even black journalists tiptoed around him, how sponsors quietly pulled out of his partners' events, how allies became shadows. And that's when he made the most controversial move of his life. He invited every major black tech founder to a single room in Atlanta. Private, phones locked, NDAs signed, no press, no applause, just a table, and one question: what are we without them? They stayed in that room for 17 hours. No breaks, no cameras, no speeches, only strategy. At 3:46 a.m., a new pact was written, a digital underground railroad, an alliance of 78 black tech leaders. They would share code, share capital, share infrastructure, but never share their silence again. They called it the Zero Guild. And just like that, Derrick disappeared again. Overnight, founder, Zero apps went viral again. But not from ads, from TikToks, from creators in Nigeria, barbers in Brooklyn, teenagers in Brixton, farmers in Senegal, mothers in Marseille. They didn't talk about Derrick. They talked about what his tools had done for them. I built my own store. I got out of debt. I hired 2 people last week. I don't need a boss anymore. Derrick was no longer the story. The story was now everyone else. And the machine didn't know how to fight that. But the fight wasn't over. One man still had reason to see Derrick fall. A former Neuron investor, a billionaire with ties to political power, and a personal vendetta. He offered $5 million to any whistleblower who could provide real dirt on Derrick. He paid hackers to break into founder Zero servers. He tried to buy the platform's code. He tried to sue for unfair competition. And then he tried something darker. He offered Derrick's estranged brother $2 million to go on record. His brother, Marcus, hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. They had fallen out over money, over legacy, over pride. Marcus gave an interview, said Derrick had always been cold, said he thinks he's better than the rest of us, said he's not building for black people, he's building for himself. The clip was everywhere. Pundits, bloggers, influencers, everyone feasted on it. For a moment, it worked. Derrick's reputation shook, until one day, he posted a letter. No video, no podcast, just a single, unbroken paragraph. They broke my name. They weaponized my silence. They turned blood into content. But let me be clear, I did not come this far to be understood by those who never tried to see me. I don't need your approval. I am no longer playing to be seen. I am playing to make you irrelevant. And below that, a list of 100 new founders funded through the Zero Guild. No explanation, just names, faces, and links to their projects. It was the loudest silence the internet had ever heard. By year's end, founder Zero had generated $840 million in independent black-owned equity. 5 major banks launched diversity programs in panic. Neuron quietly filed for bankruptcy. Michael Chadworth was seen working at a boutique consulting firm in Idaho. The billionaire antagonist was investigated for wire fraud and fled the country. And Derrick? No one knew. He had vanished from public view. Some said he moved to Ghana. Some said he was building a school in Haiti. Some said he was living in a cabin in British Columbia. But he was still watching, still funding, still building. Because ghosts don't disappear. They haunt systems. Until they fall. They tried to erase him. They silenced his voice, turned his skin into a weapon, twisted his genius into suspicion, tried to make him feel small for daring to build big. But you can't cancel an idea. You can't blacklist the wind. You can't stop a man who's already free. And Derrick Fontaine was free. The return they didn't expect. 2 years after his digital disappearance, a strange file began circulating among black tech circles. No author, no press release, just a clean zip file named Empire Phase 2. Inside was an open-source AI tool, flawless, untraceable, and 10x more efficient than any public LM. But this one was trained specifically on black history, black language, black economics, and black struggle, from ancient Timbuktu to modern Tulsa. It was called Membra, Memory Reclaimed. It didn't just generate answers. It taught liberation. It coded strategy. It connected users to forgotten archives, financial tools, mutual aid networks, and encrypted chat rooms for building parallel economies. It wasn't just software. It was rebellion. Members spread like wildfire. In Nigeria, it helped farmers create their own digital markets. In Haiti, it helped students bypass corrupt education portals. In France, it allowed protest groups to organize without police surveillance. In the US, it became a ghost tutor, guiding young coders and creators who had never set foot in Silicon Valley. None of it was centralized. There was no CO, no one to cancel, no one to threaten. But everyone knew the truth. Derrick had never left. He just stopped asking for permission. They tried to buy it. Tech giants scrambled. Amazon offered $1.2 billion to acquire members' code. Facebook tried to clone it. Apple denounced it as a risk to ethical AI. CNN called it a new black separatist tool. But the people didn't care, because for the first time, they weren't users. They were owners. For every headline that attacked Derrick, 1,000 new contributors uploaded improvements to Membra. Designers, hackers, elders, poets, coders, clerics. Membra became a movement, a spiritual tech, one that didn't just compute, but understood. One morning, users opened Membra and saw a new update. Not a patch, not a feature, just a single message on a blank screen. The future was never theirs to give you. So stop waiting for it. Build it, quietly, completely, and never ask again. It was the last anyone heard from Derrick Fontaine. But by then, he wasn't needed anymore, because the people had become the plan. In the 5 years since Membra launched, over 32,000 black-owned tech startups were born across the diaspora. $2.8 billion in black equity was created outside of traditional venture capital. Thousands of black families learned to code, invest, and teach one another. No centralized server, no boss, no begging, just tools and freedom, all built by a man they tried to humiliate because he refused to wait outside. For you watching this, do you see what they tried to do to him? Do you see how quickly they turned against someone just for walking in the front door? Now ask yourself, how many Derrick Fontaines have they erased before we ever heard their names? How many geniuses have been buried under doubt, silence, and fear? Would you have stood with Derrick when they lied about him? Or would you have scrolled past, like they wanted you to? More importantly, what will you do the next time they try to destroy someone for daring to build without them? Fire comment below. Do you believe Membra could exist today? Has anyone ever tried to make you feel small for being ambitious? If this story hit you in the gut, subscribe. Because silence isn't power. Power is choosing to never wait again. Faces of suffering. Documenting the pain. Exposing the systems. Rewriting the future. If Derrick Fontaine was real, would you follow him or fear what he represents?